It's Good Friday morning. My children are still asleep upstairs and it's pretty early. I find myself in these moments quite often wondering what the day ahead will be like. And I can't help but think today about 2,000 years ago what this morning was like for the disciples waking up. Sleepy and groggy and wondering if what they remembered from the night before was just a dream, and then that realization, maybe you're familiar with it, of that not being the case. The scriptures say that early that morning Jesus was brought before a religious court, his face bruised from the beatings he'd received the night before, the first sign that this day perhaps wasn't going to unfold as some had hoped or planned. They found him guilty and led him off to the high court before the ruler, the Roman ruler of the day. Pontius Pilate was apprehensive to convict him of anything, and yet they demanded his death. They demanded he be crucified, and so he was led off to be tortured, whipped, flesh stripped from his back, and then forced to carry the instrument of his execution to the place they decided that they would kill him. I can't imagine what that must have been like for those who had grown to love him, who'd followed him for years, who'd watched him cast out demons and heal the sick and even raise the dead. I can't help but wonder if they were confused and wondering, when is it going to happen? When's he going to reveal to these people who he really is? When's he going to save himself? And then they nailed him to a cross and put him between two criminals. This is not how they thought God would act. Maybe this isn't how you think God would or should act. You see, they were watching salvation, but it's not what they expected. It was much more brutal. It was much more bloody, and it looked much more like sacrifice than celebration. Today, 2,000 odd years later, we know the end of the story, but for those people on that day, I guess they thought they were watching the end. I guess they thought they were watching their hopes being destroyed and dashed. I guess they thought they were watching the deepest, darkest, most disappointing thing they had ever seen. This person they had placed all their hope in was being killed before their very eyes. And yet, this day, we know was the day on which all of human history turned, changed, the greatest demonstration of love and sacrifice the world has ever known. On this day we reflect on one of the most incredible parts of the God story, that in the midst of our mess and in the midst of despair and disappointment, in the midst of all of those things, God would come for us. And God would take evil upon himself, and brokenness upon himself, and allow himself to be sacrificed so that all of us might know life. We'd love you today to maybe take some time in a quiet place and read the story, maybe from Mark's Gospel. Just read chapter 15. I want to finish this by reading a passage from that, starting in verse 33. It says, "At the 6th hour, darkness came over the whole land until the 9th hour. And at the 9th hour, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, 'Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani,' which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When some of those standing near heard this, they said, "Listen, he's calling for Elijah." One man ran and filled a sponge with wine vinegar, and he put it on a stick and offered it to Jesus to drink. "Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes." With a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last, And the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus heard his cry and saw how he died, he said, "Surely this man was the Son of God."